Greatest hits records. They were once in everybody's glove box, but now they're extinct. Let's talk about it. I'm probably not gonna do like a great intro. So greatest hits records, if you don't know, are a compilation typically brought to you by a record label or the owning body of a band's work that basically condenses all of their work into 12 or 14, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, typically more than 8, typically less than 25 songs that either are some of their best charting singles, fan favorites, songs that the band plays live a lot. The reason they exist, from a cynical point of view, is to make money. And I say that as somebody who actually doesn't hate greatest hits records. I actually do think they serve their purpose. So what purpose would that be, you may ask? Well, back in the day, let's say there is a band that you've heard of or know, and they have 3 songs that you really like, but those 3 songs are on 3 different albums. Now, this is before streaming services. This is before Spotify and Apple Music. What do you have to do? Well, you could buy all 3 of those albums just to listen to those 3 songs. You could try to wait for the songs to come on the radio and get an 8-track recorder and record the songs as they're playing. Or you can borrow a friend's CD and burn those songs onto your computer, or if you don't have a computer, just keep it. I don't advocate stealing, by the way. And so a greatest hits record is basically there to put together those 3 songs so that you can buy just one album and have them and not have to worry about that. I think they serve their place. I think a great example is Bob Marley's Legend. You have this artist or band. They have a very, very vast body of work, and they have a lot of really big and well-liked songs, but they're spread kind of thin. You know, you don't want to buy Bob Marley's album from 1971. And no offense against Bob Marley, you know, great musician. I'm pretty sure there's plenty of Bob Marley songs that weren't that popular that are bangers, but you don't want to buy Bob Marley's 1971 album just because there's one song on it that you like. Legend was released in 1980 that basically compiled together all those songs. You have like Elton John or David Bowie, artists that have just huge, over 10 album releases. As a casual listener, you don't want to have to buy every single album. I think in that sense, they were very necessary. Yes, they were a way for a label to monopolize a band's work. You know, I'm not saying that's not what it is, because that totally was what it was. So it's really funny. As a kid, even when I had my first MP3 player, I basically listened to greatest hits records. Because I was a loser, I had Napster. So I go on Napster. It was very similar actually to Spotify, you know, like type in the artist's name and I would see, you know, all their albums, but I'd go straight for the greatest hits. And there's a lot of greatest hits records that are like the album artwork is basically like etched into my brain. You have A-sides by Soundgarden. You have Best of Bowie. And as a kid, I actually thought these were, obviously Best of Bowie is, you know, I knew that, but like I remember A-sides by Soundgarden. And I think there was another album that it didn't have the title Greatest Hits. I actually thought that it was just like an album released by the band that just happened to have all of their best songs on it. And, you know, like as a kid, you know, your music taste, most kids I know, which is not many, but when I was a kid, you know, my taste wasn't that adventurous. I just wanted to listen to the songs that my parents told me were good. And the songs that they thought were good were songs that the radio told them were good. So I've mostly talked about positives so far. Let's talk about some of the negative aspects. I think the biggest one that comes to mind is The Best of by Radiohead. This album basically served as an FU from EMI to Radiohead for not re-signing with them. Basically, they were just like, we own your songs. We can do whatever you want with them. And they released this album, the best of. One thing, I love the album artwork for their best of album, because I'm assuming it wasn't made by the guy who normally does their artwork. It's almost kind of like telling, like it's almost kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it almost looks like if you fed a computer all of Radiohead's album artwork and told it to make artwork out of that, or told it to be like, all right, you have to make a best of artwork. I don't know. I just think that's like kind of funny. It just looks so obviously like corporate and not something that the artists who worked with Radiohead would come up with, but it's so hard like trying to be. But the thing with a lot of these albums, and I think Bjork had a greatest hits album. Basically the thing with them, was surmised by Winston Rowntree, so this isn't my original idea. In one of his articles, he pointed out that an album is like a pizza. You know, it has these ingredients, it has a base, it has these ingredients that work together. Some slices will have a little bit more of that ingredient, some will have less, but it's very coherent. Sometimes you'll have a half and half, but they still work well together. And a greatest hits album is almost like taking different slices from different pizzas and making it into one, where you'll have one slice of Kid A with one slice of OK Computer, and you know, you just finish like the slice of Kid A and you're like, oh, I want more of that, and they're like, no, you have to have the slice of OK Computer. So why aren't they around now? Okay, that's such a stupid rhetorical question. Of course we all know why they're not around anymore, because they're virtually pointless. I can actually probably say literally pointless. I think most people who listen to music stream music, and there is a version of greatest hits now. So for example, if you go on Spotify and you go on an artist page, just as when I was a kid, I would just be like, oh, go on the greatest hits, you'll have something that says this is such and such. So I'm going to go on Taylor Swift's page right now because she's popular. Let's see. Ooh, 45th in the world. I actually thought it'd be higher. So yeah, we have This Is Taylor Swift. My problem is it's a lot less sexy than what would be a greatest hits album, because one thing, a greatest hits album has artwork to it, and sometimes it can be kind of fun. The Best of Bowie artwork is an example, but that doesn't have that. It's just like a Photoshop picture of the artist, but it's like 50 songs. You know, I know I'm like kind of backtracking and I might contradict myself, but if I'm going to see a curation of their best work, like I want it to be condensed down to at least like 20 songs, maybe 25 at most. I don't know, it just kind of feels like it's just the top 50 most listened to songs. I know there's like an algorithm that does like generate it based on a lot of different factors than just that. I don't know, it just doesn't really feel like you listen to 50 songs like you're getting like their best. You know, I think it's kind of like a tough task to take an artist's entire body of work and to whittle it down to like 12 or 14 songs that like represent almost like an introduction to their work. All right, just some quick other greatest hits facts and things I want to talk about. Fun fact, the best-selling record of all time, according to Billboard, is the Eagles' greatest hits record. I fucking hate the Eagles. I think it's funny too when a band releases a greatest hits record, but then it's like before they release something that's like critically acclaimed or charts really high or is known as being their best work. I have two examples for this. The first one is Red Hot Chili Peppers, What Hits. So going back to me on Napster, I remember Red Hot Chili Peppers were a band whose songs weren't on Napster. Like most of them, like the songs I wanted to listen to as a kid weren't on Napster, except for What Hits. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That again, that's what I'm looking for. It has Under the Bridge on it. That has Yappa Dabba Doo California on it. I clicked on it and I saw songs like Fight Like a Brave and True Men Don't Kill Coyotes. I came to realize that it was released in 1989 before they were the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which I always thought was just really funny. They released a greatest hits album like before they even had like a real hit. An example is Green Day. They released international hits in 2001, 3 years before they released American Idiot. How many albums do they have before they released a greatest hits? I mean, they had Dookie, and they had Pinkerton, and then they had Warning? And then another example of greatest hits being just a cynical repackaging. Nirvana's greatest hits release happened to be called Nirvana. Again, as a kid, I fell for it. And it was released in 2002. It was released 8 years after Cobain's death. So it's not as, like, it doesn't get under my skin as much as it would be if it was released in like 1996. What they did was they had all the songs, and on the album they had an unreleased song, You Know You're Right. And they basically held fans hostage. If you want to listen to the song, you have to buy this entire greatest hits album, even though you probably own all their CDs. I think that's like another example of just very cynical corporate monopoly on a band's work. But yeah, that's my video. Band's greatest hits. Rest in peace, 1958 to let's just do 2020. Yeah, let's just declare greatest hits albums dead. You heard it here first, folks. Greatest hits albums are dead. Like and subscribe. Maybe if I tell you to do that, you'll actually do it. I'd very much appreciate it if you did. Yeah, anyway, checking out. This is Cole from Forgotten Features.